Check, check. Abby, can you tell him back? The next part of the song is when they start, right? You take this slow when they start. No, no. Off it.
Hello, please can I have your attention? A good afternoon to you all. I want to welcome you very specially to the 31st and 32nd Combined Convocation Lecture of the University of Jos. We want to appreciate all of you for making time to be part of this. And we want to apologize for not being able to start at the designated time. But I assure you, very, very soon we will commence proceedings. But let me just inform our guests that are here for the uninitiated. By that I mean those who have never been part of this. This is quite a solemn occasion. It is part of the activities that mark the convocation of any university. We will be having a procession that will be coming through the top of the aisle And when the procession comes into the hall, we will require that we are all on our feet as we usher in the procession. And please, I will crave your indulgence to ensure that the aisle is free of any traffic so that we do not disrupt the movement of the procession. Thank you once again for being part of this. And may I also request that those of us that are sitting too far behind, I think we can still find a few seats in front that we can occupy and be properly part of this event. Thank you again for coming, and we want to apologize again for starting behind schedule.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We once again applaud you and appreciate you for your patience, but we will also crave your indulgence to please pardon with us. We're truly behind time, but we can assure you that we will not stay longer than necessary. We want to once again welcome all our dignitaries here and every single one of you stakeholders who have come to grace the 31st, 32nd combined convocation ceremony of the University of Jos. To our graduates, we say congratulations once again, and to every proud parent who has come to also witness as their words graduate or celebrate their graduation, we say you're welcome. And we welcome you to this public lecture today, and we're trusting that indeed it will be a time of learning for each and every one of us. Ladies and gentlemen, you're once again welcome. Please just bear with us while we set everything once again in motion, and kindly enjoy the background music that is provided by the Department of Music, the University of Jos. Once again, you're welcome. Thank you for your understanding.
check, 1, 2. Sound check, 1, 2.
the University of Jos anthem. God bless our UniJOS. Please, we can take our seats. May I invite Professor Hayward Babale Mafuye to come forward and offer the opening prayer.
Almighty God, our Father, we give you praise, we adore you, and we thank you for this great and wonderful day. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us together. Thank you for your loving care and protection. Thank you for our leaders. Thank you for our president. Thank you for our council. Thank you for our ministers. Thank you for the executive secretary. Thank you, oh God, for all of our leaders that are gathered here. Thank you for everyone, our students, our staff, and even for our convocation lecturer. We ask, oh God, in your mercy, as we sit to listen to this wonderful lecture, we believe that you will speak to our hearts, you will speak to the nation beyond those of us that are present in this hall, that, Lord, if by it our nation will become better by the ideas that are being shared, we ask that everything that is said and done will bring honor and glory to your holy name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hayward Babale Mafuye, former Vice Chancellor, University of Jos, for graciously opening this public lecture with a word of prayer. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you're highly welcome to the public lecture, the convocation lecture for the combined 31st 32nd Convocation of the University of Jos. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gathered here today in honor of the prestigious graduates of the University of Jos. And we're honored to have all the dignitaries here today gracing this occasion. We will start off by please inviting the Vice Chancellor, University of Jos. Okay, we're sorry about that. We will just crave your indulgence to do a brief introduction and recognition of our dignitaries here today. We have in our midst the Executive Governor of Plateau State, who also doubles as the chairman, Northern Governors Forum, Right Honorable Barrister Simon Bako Lalong. He's also a distinguished alumni of the University of Jos, and he is represented here today, and we want to also acknowledge the representative of the Governor of Plateau State. We will also want to acknowledge the chairperson of today's occasion, who happens to be a woman of great repute, indeed a voice for women on the plateau, nationally and also internationally. We have in our midst Dame Talent. You're welcome, ma. It's an honor to have you. Please, can we indeed welcome her? Thank you so much, ma, for gracing this occasion. Solidarity indeed, fighting for the rights of every just citizen. Indeed, we thank you. Honorable Minister for Women Affairs, you're welcome, ma. Also a distinguished alumnus of the University of Jos. What an honor indeed. Thank you, ma. We also have the special guest of honor, Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, and all his members and his delegates of the third phone. Indeed, sir. Come. I gathered part of the reason why we're starting a little bit late is because he had to commission a lot of projects that have been graciously funded by TED Fund for University of Jos. And so we say thank you so much, sir, for this honor. We're grateful. And permit me, it's not in my place to do this, but I'm sure we'll all agree that we will want more. Are we together? So by this, we crave your indulgence to be Oliver Twist to say we want more, sir. Thank you so much. All right, we'll also want to acknowledge the Pro-Chancellor, who happens to also be the chairman of the 13th UniJOS Governing Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm honor to Prince Tony Momo and other distinguished members of the council. Some of them are seated in the audience and I'm wondering why. Okay, you're welcome, sir. Please, another round of applause as we recognize him. He just happened to graciously walk in. You're welcome, sir, our Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the 13th UniJOS Governing Council. You're highly welcome, sir. And we indeed acknowledge every distinguished council member under your leadership. You're all welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to, at this time, recognize a special individual, our host of today, Professor C.D. Sebastian Memoko, the one and only Vice Chancellor, University of Jos. And we have come to know him as Meitemoko. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate him. Indeed, Meitemoko Nkoa, and for that we say thank you so much, sir, for bringing ease, for bringing comfort, and for looking well to the well-being of your staff. We say indeed you are Meitemoko. Indeed, boza to the Vice Chancellor. And it is said that beside every successful gentleman is elegant, well-deserving lady who has watched over him over the years. And for these, we say you're highly welcome, ma. We welcome you, Honorable Mrs. Lucy Memoko. You're welcome, ma. Thank you indeed for being a strong pillar and for making the work very easy. We say thank you. You're welcome, ma. We will also want to acknowledge Professor Peter Okebukola. He's a former Executive Secretary, the National Universities Commission. You're indeed welcome, sir. The Lord bless you. Thank you for coming. We also have members of the University of Jos counseling. Permit me, let me not leave this out. We have in our midst also the Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University. Please indeed, we have not left you out, sir. We couldn't have done this without you. You stand with us in support as a sister university, and we say you're welcome, sir. It's an honor to have you in our midst. Thank you. All right, former Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I have the pleasure to recognize the presence of the President of the University of Jos Alumni Association in the presence of Alhaji Idris Yakubu. He's here with us. May I recognize also very specially the member of representing the Federal Ministry of Education in the person of Mrs. Abiaji Nuju Anibogu. Please a round of applause for her. I have the privilege also to recognize very specially the principal officers of the University of Jos. May I recognize the chairman of the Central Convocation Committee and Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic in the person of Professor Tanko Ishaya. Please a round of applause for Professor Ishaya. The registrar of the University of Jos is Chief Monday Danjem, and he's also here with us. Please a round of applause for Professor Danjem. We have Mr. Ibrahim Al-Hassan, the bossa of the University of Jos. Please a round of applause. May I also recognize very especially the librarian of the University of Jos, Dr. Stephen Akintunde. He's here also with us. May I recognize members of council that are here also. We have, I thought I saw Dr. Philomena Mudbam. Okay. May I recognize the presence of Professor Mrs. Lami Hanatulombin. Please a round of applause for her. She is a member of council and the chairman or chairperson committee of deans and directors in the University of Jos. Professor Simon Hilltalk, he's a member of council. Can we recognize him with a round of applause? May I recognize also Professor Nelson Chagok, a member of council. Please a round of applause for him. May I recognize the presence of Inde Yakubu Gomos. He's also a member of council. Thank you. May I recognize the presence of Professor Tor Yorapu. Please a round of applause for him. He's a member of council. We'll go ahead to recognize the presence of other dignitaries that are here.
Okay, thank you, Abdullahi. We will also want to recognize the head of department, special duties and external relations. We have with us this day architect Tali, presenting the sector commander, FRSC Jos Command. You're welcome. Thank you so much for ensuring that indeed it's roadworthy enough for us to plight the roads. We will also want to acknowledge in our midst, standing with us in support of this public lecture today, Mrs. Esther Dogonyaro. You're welcome, ma. Thank you so much. Also, we acknowledge Mr. Dixon Onuaha, the Director, ICT Department of the ITF, representing Sir Joseph Ari KSM, who is the Director General of ITF. You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much. We'll also want to acknowledge Professor Abdul Hamed Adamu Ibrahim, representing the Vice Chancellor, Federal University, Duse. You're welcome, sir. We will also want you to appreciate with us today Chief S.D. Tabgun, MNI, Honorable Commissioner, Ministry for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, Plateau State. You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. We also have with us Mishkom L.L. Buen, FPSN, Chairman, CEO, Rayfield Chemical Works Limited. You're welcome, sir. Thank you indeed for supporting us today. We also have Chief Barrister Samuel Gitik Mafuye, OON. You're welcome, sir. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Lastly, on our list for now, because we have a long list, but because we have so much to cover, we will do other recognitions as we go along. We have with us today Professor W.B. Curex, OFR, Vice Chancellor, Bingham University, Karu. You're welcome, sir. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. The Lord bless you. Thank you for coming. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together for ourselves. Okay, thank you so much for being here today. And we can assure you that this public lecture will be one that will move you forward. And in moving you forward, it will also move our nation to a desired place where you and I can go out there and be proud to be Nigerians. And so we say once again, you're welcome to today's public lecture.
I have the pleasure, very especially at this time, to recognize the Convocation lecturer in the person of Professor Dakas, C.J. Dakas, SAN. Professor Dakas will be speaking on the topic, Our Common Humanity Towards Harnessing Nigeria's Diversity for Sustainable Peace and Development. I take it again, Our Common Humanity Towards Harnessing Nigeria's Diversity for Sustainable Peace and Development. Please, another round of applause for our Convocation lecturer. On this note, I have the special pleasure, privilege to invite the Vice Chancellor of the University of Jos, Professor Seidi Sebastian Construction Meimako. Please a round of applause as he comes forward to our address.
Visitor to the University of Jos, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, ably represented by the Executive Secretary of TEDFON in the person of Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Tallinn, the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of the University of Jos, Chief Prince Tony Momo, members of the University of Jos Governing Council, my distinguished Dean, one of whom is here with us today, Professor Peter Okebukola, my immediate predecessor in office, in the person of Professor Hayward Babale Mafwe. Let me be selfish a little bit. I want to recognize my wife. Who is my My wife, you are welcome. My dear professors in the university, you can also see a member of the State Executive Council who is seated here on the high table, Sylvan Stapgun, our elder statesman, pharmacist Chief Lawrence Benyen, other elders, the former Vice Chancellor, Plateau State University, Professor Sheni, principal officers of the university, members of Senate, members of the press, serving security officers, chief security officers of the state. I have not been given the protocol list. And above all, my students, my dear students, my dear students. Please, you to this historic event, our convocation lecture for the 31st and 32nd combined convocation ceremony of the University of Jos. Today is historic. Since morning, we've been commissioning some projects in the university. And this afternoon, we will listen to our own, the very distinguished professor of law, a person that is globally known, Professor C.J. Dakas. You are welcome. Now, when I requested him to give this lecture, just about 2 weeks ago, he said something that made me guilty. He asked me to give him a topic in spite of the shortness of time. And because I knew I was guilty, I said, no, we dragged with him that he should speak on a topic of his choice. Because one, I'm not a lawyer. Two, I'm not a social activist. Three, I may be telling him about university governance. So I tactically avoided dictating a topic within 2 weeks to a convocation lecturer. And by evening, he called me that he would come up with a topic and he would communicate me the following day. And this is the result of that communication. We are grateful. The Minister of Women Affairs, my very senior sister, Dame Pauline Talen, I told her that we have a convocation ceremony, and I know that she's very, very busy. But if she could spare time to come and share this lecture. By then, she was at an event in Port Harcourt. She just asked me for the date, and I told her the date. And she said, just remind me the following day. The result of the series of reminders is why she has left other important state functions to be here. Mommy, we thank you. You know, everybody has a godfather. And the University of Jos are profoundly grateful to the Third Fund Executive Secretary. Sometimes you don't argue with your principal, but I had the benefit of arguing with him today. I said, sir, when they are saying Memoko has done this, Memoko has done that, I said, actually, it is you. He said, no. And because I had the privilege of riding with him, and the argument went on, I said, sir, you know, without you, he said, the leadership matters. Anyway, I wanted to, he said he will not take the credit. Sir, okay, let's share the credit with you. We thank you. Now, it's difficult coming up with the list of awardees in a country as diverse as Nigeria. So, weeks and weeks of meeting, we are still not sure of the person we will honor. And then there was this spiritual dimension. The direction came. And the name of Professor Peter Okebukola came up. So that evening, I just put a call to him, and he picked. After the pleasantries, I now delivered the message. He said, "That is fantastic. The University of Jos, you want to honor me? I'm profoundly appreciative of what you are doing." And I know he is a global person. And I was even thinking maybe he's in one part of the globe, somewhere not close to Africa. And he readily accepted. No wonder when we presented your name as Senate, without any exception, people didn't even need to Google you. You were on their mouths and faces. And, sir, congratulations. So we are here to listen to Professor Dakas, who until recently was a staff of the university. He is talking to us about our common humanity towards harnessing Nigeria's diversity for sustainable peace and development. I don't know what is contained in here. I am as eager to listen to him because he is somebody that everybody will want to listen to. My fellow audience, I thank you and I invite you to listen to the lessons we will take home today. May the good Lord direct us in this lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please, another round of applause for our Vice Chancellor. Wow. I think he deserves a better round of applause than that. Thank you. May I recognize very quickly the presence of the representative of the Vice Chancellor, Lautech, in the person of Dr. Kayode Ogunleye. He's the registrar of that institution. Please, a round of applause for Dr. Ogunleye. Thank you very much for being part of this occasion. At this juncture, may I very specially welcome and invite the chairman or the chairperson of this occasion, no other person than the Minister, Women Affairs, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dame Pauline Talen, OFR, to come forward and give her opening remarks.
Thank you. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by my very dear brother, the Executive Secretary of TEDFON, Professor Suleiman Bogoro, who has done so well for our dear University of Jos. Please give him another big round of applause. Prof, I'm saying thank you on behalf of the alumni. Thank you. The Chairman, Governing Council, and Pro-Chancellor of the University of Jos, Prince Tony Momo, and all council members here present. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Jos, my dear brother, Professor Seti Sebastian Maimoko, and his dear wife, and my sister, Mrs. Lucy Maimoko. The representatives and of agencies here present, Convocation lecturer, Professor Dakas, son, a distinguished professor of law, former vice chancellors here present, former NUC secretary, honorable commissioners here present, former Minister of Aviation, my dear brother, Chief Samuel Mafuye. I wish my chairman of the Alumni Association, I acknowledge you, and all the alumni, members of the alumni of the University of Jos, Professor Cheney, and all other professors here present. I acknowledge all members of the high table in this great convocation lecture ceremony. As the chairperson of this August gathering, you'll agree with me that we are 2 hours behind time. And I wouldn't want to waste much time but to acknowledge all the distinguished Nigerians here present. I particularly acknowledge the female professors of the University of Jos. I use my dear sister, Professor Lar, as a point of contact to all the female professors of the University of Jos. Great women of Nigeria, Nigerian youths, great students of Nigeria, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this great convocation lecture. On behalf of my humble self, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and my entire team from the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, and indeed the good people of Plateau State, I greet you and I feel excited to be home. It's nice to be home. It's nice to be in your alma mater. I would also like to welcome all our distinguished guests and participants to the convocation lecture of our great university, which I am indeed proud to be an alumni of today's lecture, apart from heralding grand finale of the 31st and 32nd combined convocation ceremony of this institution. This marks a great milestone in the lives of all distinguished guests seated here today, including especially the community staff of the university, students, proud graduates, and parents alike. I consider this to be a matter of profound delight and honor for me to be asked to perform such an important academic function. Indeed, at a landmarking academic festival like the Convocation in the calendar of a university, farewells and stock takings are critical and crucial. Memorable features of a convocation ceremony, which is the convocation lecture, launches great things in the life of both the students and the academic staff. I am therefore humbled to be considered worthy and qualified to perform this function by the authorities of this well-established university to share this year's convocation lecture. It is even more heartwarming to see that you have all been able to take time away from your busy schedules and other commitments to be with us today as we seek useful ways to move Nigeria in a positive direction by advocating quality education that forges directional structures for sustainable peace, harmony, and national development. Our preoccupation in this lecture, therefore, is with the challenges of national integration in all its ramifications and the crucial role that education, especially for the girl child, our shared heritage, common destiny, and unity in diversity must play in fostering national integration. The theme of today's lecture, Our Common Humanity Towards Harnessing Nigerians' Diversity for Sustainable Peace and Development, would highlight a number of important policy-related issues. Therefore, a promising opportunity and it is my hope that you will all find the lecture very beneficial to reinventing national rebirth at all levels, particularly in our great state, Plateau. At the risk of preempting what promises to be a stimulating convocation lecture, it behoves on me and all of us here, and also future generations, to recognize the pioneering roles and sacrifices by our founding fathers in the years past, especially the driving force behind the establishment of the University of Jos, our most Reverend J.D. Gumwalk in 1975. It is expected that central to today's lecture would be our collective resolve to lay emphasis on the need for quality, functional, accessible, and globally competitive education in our country, Nigeria. This is more so because education, as we all agree, is at the heart of our opportunities, either as individuals, families, communities, or nations. Our life choices include those to do with integration and cohesion. And all this resolve around our educational investment and exposes us to the best practices. I believe some of the desired educational improvement should be targeted at the quality of staff and entrance to be recruited into the school system, good governance and accountability. Conditions of service, infrastructure, improved funding, staff training, and capacity building across the board, including a viral ecosystem, which our dear Vice Chancellor is doing very well. This would in turn have a ripple effect on the quality of the graduates that we badly need to drive the future of our dear country. It is therefore with pride and a deep sense of fulfillment that I commend the authorities of the university over the choice of this year's convocation lecturer, who, as you can read from his citation, has fulfilled several secondary and primary leadership function positions, rising to his pinnacle and building what has turned out to be a brilliant academically, legal, and public service career. In conclusion, I wish to most heartedly express the deep sense of gratitude that I feel for our outstanding and remarkable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sebastian Zedi Memoko, the chairman and members of his formidable governing council, principal officers of the university, all academic and non-academic staffs, as well as students of our university, for all you have individually and collectively achieved, and for your relentless efforts in moving this great university to greater heights. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and my best wishes for what I hope will be the most productive and rewarding lecture. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can do better than that. Please let's appreciate Minister, Women Affairs. Indeed, she has spoken to us about the need for collective resolve. And I believe we're here today to prove that together we can achieve a lot more in the educational sector. And just as she did wish that there will be integration for best educational practices, and that is one of the things that I can assuredly tell you University of Jos is proudly known for. And for that, we say thank you so much, Ma, for that chairperson's opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to quickly recognize in our midst Dr. Peter Aboki. He is the Deputy Provost, representing the Provost, College of Agriculture, Lafayette, Nasarawa State. You're welcome, sir. Thank you for coming. We will also want to acknowledge the Head of Department, Special Duties and External Relations, in the person of Assistant Corps member Selbian Tali of the FRSC Sector Commander, Plateau State Command. You're welcome, Ma. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, Principal Officers, University of Jos. We couldn't have left you all out. Thank you so very much for all the works you have put in these academic sessions. We want to truly appreciate all directors. We appreciate all deans. We appreciate every head of department. And indeed, we're so grateful to every hardworking, astute professor here in present University of Jos. Please, a round of applause for every single one of them. And we say thank you indeed. Okay, wow. We want to acknowledge in our midst. You know, earlier on, the minister said using Professor Patricia Lara as contact to all the female professors. And we have one who indeed has blazed the trail and is standing for us today as a legacy that women can arise to administrative positions. Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm welcome to the former Vice Chancellor, the former DVC admin of University of Jos, Professor Teresa Madu. Ma, you're highly welcome. You're welcome, Mommy. You're welcome, Ma. The Lord bless you. Nice to have you in the house. Okay. Permit me to invite my senior sister, one-time head of department, Mass Communication, University of Jos, Dr. Sarah Luahas, to present the citation of today's guest lecturer. You're welcome. A round of applause for her, please. Dr. Sarah Luahas.
So as the citation is being read, may we request that the convocation lecturer comes forward as the citation is being read. Please, a round of applause for our convocation lecturer as he comes forward.
A brief citation of Professor Dakas C. J. Dakas, PhD, SAN. Professor Dakas C. J. Dakas is a professor of law, a senior advocate of Nigeria, SAN, and the principal partner, Professor Dakas C. J. Dakas, SAN and Co. From 2014 to 2018, he served as the Dean of Law, University of Jos. From 2012 to 2014, he was the Ben Mwabuize Distinguished Professor of Law at the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, Abuja, Nigeria. Within the same period, he was the Director of Research at the same institute. A former Attorney General and Commissioner of Justice of Plateau State, Professor Dakas holds an LLB first-class honors degree as well as postgraduate law degrees. Including a PhD from renowned universities within and outside Nigeria. He has been a visiting professor at Canada's preeminent law school, Osgoode Hall Law School, York University, and other prestigious institutions, and has received several meritorious awards for superlative academic performance. A prolific author, Professor Dakas has over 80 publications to his credit. Consisting of several authored and edited books, chapters in books, as well as articles on cutting-edge issues in reputable Nigerian and international journals. A highly sought-after speaker, Professor Dakas has presented over 120 papers at workshops, roundtables, seminars, and conferences organized by several governmental and non-governmental organizations and institutions within and outside Nigeria. Outside Nigeria, Professor Dakas has presented papers at conferences in the United States of America, USA, Canada, Italy, South Korea, and so on and so forth. Professor Dakas has had a distinguished public service career within and outside the university system and has been engaged in several national and international assignments. Additionally, he is widely consulted by governments, intergovernmental organizations, and non-governmental organizations. Rated as one of Nigeria's top 100 lawyers, Professor Dakas has an enviable track record of outstanding achievements as an academic, a legal practitioner, and a public servant, and is highly respected and celebrated in the community of legal scholarship. Vice Chancellor, sir, it is my great pleasure and privilege to present for the 31st and 32nd Convocation lecture titled Our Common Humanity Towards Harnessing Nigeria's Diversity for Sustainable Peace and Development, Professor Dakas C. Dakas, S.A.N.
Great Josites. Come on, are there great Josites in the house? Great Josites. Great Josites. Great. The visitor to the University of Jos, His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, ably represented by my mentor, and I dare say my friend, the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, in whom I'm well pleased. The chairperson of this very special occasion, in the world of politics, we would say she's a woman of timber and caliber. Clearly, one of Nigeria's finest Amazons, someone that some of us got introduced to for the first time when she served as an honorable commissioner in the government of Plateau State and eventually served as minister, former deputy governor of Plateau State, and currently the Minister for Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Talen. Mr. Chairman and members of the University Council, I was just telling Prince Tony Momo a few minutes ago that as a professor of constitutional law, each time we see him, our minds immediately race to Tony Momo against the Senate, which was a matter that had to deal with the contours of the investigative powers, oversight powers of the National Assembly. And as Minister of Information at some point in this country, he also, you will remember, wrote letters to fellow Nigerians. And has assured me that there is another conversation that is going to unfold in the as we proceed. And I look forward to that conversation. Thank you very much, sir, and members of your council. Mr. Vice Chancellor and other principal officers of the university, someone said that his name is Maimako Taimako. Someone said his name is Maimako Construction. And I overheard the executive secretary of the TET Fund saying that indeed he is Maimako Infrastructure. And I will come back to this in a minute. Members of the University Senate, other members of the university community, our dear graduates, our dear students, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I frankly don't know where to begin, but let me say that this is indeed for me a great honor and privilege to be entrusted with what I consider to be an awesome responsibility of delivering this convocation lecture at the 31st and 32nd convocation ceremonies of our dear university. As many of you know, I joined the services of the University of Jos in August 1992, about 27 years ago, and voluntarily retired when I turned 50 in order to explore what I consider to be other platforms for service. Let me put on record my profound gratitude to the University of Jos for availing me the platform to teach, to supervise, and mentor thousands of undergraduate and postgraduate students, expand the frontiers of knowledge through what I consider to be cutting-edge research, and to serve humanity in other capacities. The privilege of the opportunity to deliver this convocation lecture, Mr. Vice Chancellor, is indeed an icing on the cake, for which the profundity of my gratitude knows no bounds. Some of you would recall that when I had the privilege of delivering the 65th inaugural lecture of this great university, the title was, "For the Sake of Present and Future Generations, Reflections on My Academic Odyssey and Legal Scholarship." And I delivered this when the immediate past Vice Chancellor of the University of Jos, Professor Hayward Babale Mafue, was the Vice Chancellor. And at that inaugural lecture, many of you would recall, I endowed 5 what I consider merit-based scholarships or prizes. The first was in my name for the best graduating student in law. The second was in honor of my wife, who is here somewhere out there. And, Honorable Minister, this was for the overall best graduating female student in the Faculty of Law. And I also endowed a prize in honor of my parents, Mary and James Dacus Prize for the overall best graduating student in the university. And I then honored 2 of my academic mentors, Professor Ibere Oseke, and it was for the best student in international law, and one in honor of Professor Onjege Wado, former Deputy Governor of Nasarawa State, and it was for the best graduating student in jurisprudence. Now, these prizes were merit-based. Since leaving the services of the University of Jos in July 2018, I can say with every degree of confidence and with deep gratitude and humility that God has been so gracious to me and my family that I could not but quote the wordings of Psalms 23 verse 5. And as many of you know, that psalm says, "My cup overflows with blessings." And because of that, Mr. Vice Chancellor, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite you over here. Now, please, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. At least I get to command you to come here today. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. When I left the University of Jos in July 2018, a number of my friends, scholars all over this country, decided to honor me with a collection of essays, and it is titled "Advancing the Frontiers of Law and Justice, Essays in honor of Professor Dacus C.J. Dacus SN," and I deeply owe them gratitude. So at this convocation lecture, let me have the honor of donating 10 copies of this book to the university. 5 copies will go to the university library, and 5 copies, of course, will go to the Library of Law. And I'm glad that the Dean of Law is here. So if you don't mind, if I can just hand them over to Mr. Vice Chancellor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
We are grateful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chancellor, if you don't mind, you can remain. Not the librarian this time.
So there are 2 of us now.
As an undergraduate student in this university between 1986 and 1990, as many of you know, for many of us it was a struggle. I walked day in, day out from Bauchi Road to the university every day. At some point, as I pointed out during my inaugural lecture, from around St. Marumba to the university every day. And so for many of us, it was a great struggle. And I know that for many of our students, it's also a great struggle. So I'd like to make a token contribution to alleviating the plight of our indigent students in the university. And so, sir, Mr. Vice Chancellor, I need you to identify 50 students, indigent students, that are struggling with their finances, and we will give each one of them 20,000 naira. The last time I checked my mathematics, 20,000 times 50 totals 1 million. And so on behalf of myself and my family, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Vice Chancellor a check for the sum of 1 million naira. Thank you very much, sir. You can take your seat now, sir. Thank you. As I indicated in the convocation lecture, this will be distributed to the beneficiaries without regard to their states of origin, without regard to their religions or ethnicity. And Mr. Vice Chancellor, you will find that I pointed out in the letter that we must have an equal proportion of female and male students. So 25 female students and 25 male students. Now let me come to Mr. Infrastructure. Let me take the benefit of this opportunity to sincerely congratulate the Vice Chancellor, Professor Sedi Sebastian Maimako, Mete Mako, Mr. Infrastructure. Those of you who had the privilege of being part of the commissioning ceremony this morning could not but be in awe. I walked into the Vice Chancellor's office, and as many of you know, since the establishment of the university in 1975, that's over 40 years ago, it is to the credit of Mr. Vice Chancellor that the administrative structure of the university, especially the seat of government, has moved to its permanent site for the very first time. This is, by any standards, worthy of celebration. And we sincerely thank you, Mr. Vice Chancellor, Mr. Infrastructure. And I had the privilege of going through the midterm report of Mr. Vice Chancellor, and I was not surprised when I discovered that in one of the goodwill messages, one came from the Academic Staff Union of Universities, and they described what the Vice Chancellor has done as a transformational stride in reducing the infrastructural deficit of the university. And all the other unions said the same thing. And those of you who know ASU, for ASU to say that this was transformational, indeed, is a major accomplishment. I'll say just 2 more things about Mr. Vice Chancellor. Mr. Vice Chancellor, when I delivered my inaugural lecture, I drew attention to one of the policies of the university that I considered to be obnoxious. This was a policy where if you proceeded on an approved training leave or study leave, especially if you were not on ground, the challenge is that when you returned, the period when you were away was not computed for the purposes of maturation for your promotion. And I was one of the victims of that policy, and I drew attention to that in my inaugural lecture and pleaded that this was something that needed to be addressed. Thankfully, Mr. Vice Chancellor was there in his capacity as the Dean of Management Sciences. And so when I was going through the midterm report of the Vice Chancellor, I was very excited when I came across this. Quote, "The Professor S.S. Memako-led administration made a deliberate policy that human resource development would be pivotal to the success of its administration. Part of the effort towards ensuring staff welfare necessitated the review of some policies of the university that were retrogressive. Hitherto, university staff who are away on approved full-time study leave used to lose the years spent on studies when the duration required for promotion is counted. But since assumption of office, the Professor S.S. Memako-led administration introduced a new policy on promotion which was approved by the University Governing Council. By this new policy, the years spent on study leave are counted for the purpose of promotion, as long as the staff completes his or her studies and returns to duty post." End of quote. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I say with every sense of responsibility that my joy knows no bounds. Even though I'm no longer in a position to personally benefit from this noble gesture, I believe that this commendable initiative will enhance staff welfare and open up new vistas for staff training and development. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I urge you and your management team not to rest on your oars. There's always room for improvement. You celebrated your midterm and you took stock, and I would urge that you avoid the pitfalls and consolidate on the gains of the preceding years of your tenure. If you learn the right lessons, I believe you will be the better for it. I sincerely pray that God will equip you to finish strong, not only in accomplishments, but in excellent health. You know, when Professor Memako was appointed Vice Chancellor, for those of you who know my history, and for people like me who come from rural communities, this was a big deal. I remember that when he gave his inaugural lecture, and he needed to invite people from his village, as he told us here, they couldn't understand what an inaugural lecture was. And so he told the people of his village to come to Jos for a Thanksgiving ceremony. And boy, they came. Boy, they came. Why is this important? For people like us who come from rural communities and humble backgrounds, the difference between us and poverty is the education that through the grace of God we've been able to attain. And when you succeed, it will inspire not only the people within the university community, but the young men and women in your community who are desperately in need of role models. And you know, sir, from back in Chiawa, you know the lot of your people in that community. And in an age when we celebrate all kinds of characters simply because of the money that they bring to bear on the system without a sense of how they came by the money, when the young people in your community look to you, they will now know that there is virtue in education. And I'm confident that by the grace of God, over the course of your tenure, you will indeed not only excel, but you will be the inspiration that will indeed move your community beyond its current state. I will address one other issue before I come to the lecture. But before I do that, you know that I referred to Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro as my mentor, in whom I'm well placed. Quite apart from our connection at the level of the Gindri All Students Association, GOSA, an association that he had the privilege of being president of, he indeed considers me like his younger brother. And those of you who have followed his trajectory know that this is one individual that stands out in every respect. And you know that the circumstances under which he came back to office as executive secretary of TETFAN is one that indeed is out of this world. And we pray that by the grace of God, you will not only continue to excel, but you will continue to inspire the younger generation that indeed there is virtue in integrity, and that indeed you will continue to transform the university system through your office. And I'd like to thank you that you consider me as your younger brother, and in many respects, I dare say, as a friend. Thank you very much. But let me come to something that Her Excellency Pauline Talen referred to in her speech. And I've said that we need to have a sense of history, and that requires that we pay a special tribute to the founding father of this university, J.D. Gomwalk. So let me leverage. Incidentally, J.D. Gomwalk, also GOSA, of the first set of GOSA, he graduated from the Gindri Boys Secondary School in 1955. I think his classmates were Professor Onazi, right? And in any event, the Gindri family has produced not less than 5 vice-chancellors of this university, going back to Professor Onazi, to Professor Gomwalk, to Professor Mangvat, to Professor Theoden, to Professor Hayward Babale Mafwe. And I hope, Mr. Vice Chancellor, you will hand over to someone from the Gindri family. If you have had the privilege of reading a very important book, there's a very important book by the late Anthony Goyol. The book is titled Gomwalk, A Man of Vision. You need to read that book to understand the context in which the University of Jos was established. Goyol recounts that when Gomwalk wanted to establish the university, he looked to Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, not quite far from here. Unfortunately, his efforts were rebuffed. And Goyol indicates that of all the projects that were accomplished by J.D. Gomwalk, he says that the establishment of the University of Jos, quote, gave him the greatest challenge. And, quote, that he fought relentlessly until his dream became a reality. If you have read the book by our Convocation lecturer last year, Father Matthew Hassan Kuka, Religion, Politics, and Power in Northern Nigeria, you would find that Father Kuka corroborates that account. And so, given the pivotal role that J.D. Gomwalk played in the establishment of the University of Jos, I'm sure many of our colleagues will remember this, when the University of Jos celebrated its 40th anniversary, I had the honor of proposing on the floor of Senate that the University of Jos should confer on J.D. Gomwalk a posthumous honorary doctorate degree. And to the credit of the Senate of the university and the Vice Chancellor at the time, this proposal was approved without any objection from any member of Senate of the university. Unfortunately, this noble initiative was truncated or scuttled by some powerful forces outside the university. I don't have the luxury of giving you the context in which this happened. Mr. Vice Chancellor, members of the Senate of the university, I urge you to revisit that initiative to honor J.D. Gomwok with a posthumous honorary doctorate degree. And I like to think that the context in which the other one was truncated is no longer there. But I can provide you the context in confidence if the need arises. But I would also like to say that the university may also consider a number of other mechanisms through which to honor J.D. Gomwok. One, the university may establish or rename a major research center in his honor. And I can assure you, even though I'm not the executive secretary of TETFAN, that my mentor will be more than delighted to support that initiative, whether in or out of office. I mean, come to think of it, if we were to begin to speak of a J.D. Gomwok Center for Middle Belt Studies, for instance, to just give you an example, or the university may decide to institute an annual lecture in his honor, or the university may collaborate with relevant stakeholders to endow a professorial chair in his honor. Or the university may decide to name a major entities within the university community in his honor, or name a major street within the university in his honor. I believe that it is imperative that this great university celebrates and honors the legendary J.D. Gomwok, whose foresight, resilience, tenacity, and sacrifice were instrumental to its establishment. And I urge the university and other relevant stakeholders to do what you can to honor this great man and to honor his memory. Let me now come to the convocation lecture, and because copies are available, I'm going to speak to it, and therefore I'm not going to take a lot of time. As Mr. Vice Chancellor indicated, when he reached out to convey the invitation to this convocation lecture, he graciously gave me the option of a choice of topic. As a lawyer, my first impulse was to engage and interrogate a topical legal issue. But upon reflection, I decided to focus on the present topic, our common humanity, towards harnessing Nigeria's diversity for sustainable peace and development. And I did so for a number of reasons. From 1914, when the entity called Nigeria came into being through the Amalgamation Act of 1914, it's been over a century. We celebrated the centenary of the Nigerian state. And it's almost 6 decades. And yet, Nigerians continue to grapple with the challenge of engendering and enabling environment for the mutual and harmonious coexistence of its diverse peoples. Yes, colonialism has a role to play, but I very strongly believe that without exonerating the role that colonialism has to take responsibility for, 100 years after it came into being, almost 60 years since the Nigerian state attained political independence, shouldn't we, as a people, get to a point when we can say to ourselves that we can no longer hold colonialism responsible for our plight, or that indeed that colonialism is not the only or the sole culprit in terms of the challenges that we grapple with. Those of you who are students of sociology, some of us then read Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. But we need to also self-audit our own roles in the Nigerian project and also begin to interrogate how Africans have also underdeveloped Africa. I believe that in spite of the role that colonialism played, we as a nation must dare to rise above our circumstances and create for ourselves the type of country that we desire. And we can do so, in my view, through, among other options, a constructive management of our diversity. Second, As many of you know, identity politics is a major challenge in our polity. Instead of celebrating our diversity and leveraging on it to advance our collective interest, our diversity is being manipulated and deployed to unleash terror on our people in pursuit of the selfish interest of its heinous perpetrators. The third reason why I chose to focus on this is because, as the famous Yusuf Bala Usman pointed out, national cohesion has to be planned for deliberately and consciously, as it cannot come about through accident or luck, no matter how many centuries a people band together within one sovereignty. And so I believe that by engaging this topic, we are underscoring the fact that there is no room for complacency or procrastination. Fourth, I believe that fidelity to our common humanity is an imperative that we can ignore only at our own peril. And finally, it's obvious that without peace, there can be no meaningful development. By promoting our common humanity, we can engage and bolster the intersection of peace and development. And so what is our common humanity? I'd like to refer to the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. And this declaration underscores the fact that the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. In my view, inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family are at the core of our common humanity. Indeed, the American Declaration of Independence of 1776 deploys similar language and actually describes our common humanity as self-evident, because it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, in this case involving women, are created equal, and that they're endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you look at the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, it clearly states that any doctrine of superiority based on racial differentiation is scientifically false, morally condemnable, socially unjust, and dangerous, and that there is no justification whatsoever for racial discrimination in theory or in practice anywhere. Some of us will begin to wonder whether in the Nigerian context we can speak in terms of race. But it is interesting that when you look at Article 1, Sub 1 of the Convention, it actually defines racial discrimination to include discrimination on the basis of ethnic origin. And so it says, racial discrimination is any distinction, exclusion, restriction, or preference based on race, color, descent, or national or ethnic origin, which has the purpose or effect of nullifying or impairing the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal footing of human rights and fundamental freedoms in the political, economic, social, cultural, or any other field of public life. And I think that this is significant because to describe racial discrimination as encapsulating discrimination on the basis of ethnic origin should remind us that we need as a people to band together and focus on our common humanity. Unfortunately, as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has clearly indicated, we find that disregard for our common humanity has resulted in what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights calls barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind. And if you look at the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, these barbarous acts are war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And if you look at what disregard for common humanity has caused, you will find that whether it is in the context of slave trade or it is in the context of race challenges in the United States and other parts of the world, or you're dealing with apartheid, or you're dealing with genocide, you can imagine Rwanda, for instance, 800 people killed within a very short span of time for no other reason than their ethnic identity. The question was whether you were Hutu or you were Tutsi. And in our own context, there is also, in many cases, the challenge of ethnic cleansing. And I don't need to give you a sense of that because you live in these times and you understand some of the challenges that we face. We have internally displaced persons all over the place. And this is because of contempt for our common humanity. And therefore, it is absolutely essential that we work together as a people to harness our diversity for the common good. I will now move very quickly to what I call confronting Nigeria's weapons of mass destruction. And many of you have heard me speak about this, that in conventional discourse, weapons of mass destruction are either chemical, or they're biological, or they're nuclear, and in recent times, the weapons of cyber warfare. But you ask yourself, how many people have we lost to biological weapons? How many people have we lost as a country to chemical weapons? How many Nigerians have we lost to nuclear weapons? How many Nigerians have we lost to the weapons of cyber warfare? Tragically, our weapons of mass destruction are the manipulation of religion, the manipulation of ethnicity and other sectional fault lines, poverty, disease. And the sooner we address these weapons of mass destruction, the better for all of us. I'm a professor of constitutional law, and the reference point for me in terms of the building blocks of national cohesion of this country would be section 15 of the Nigerian Constitution. And I'd like to just refer to subsection 4. The state shall foster a feeling of belonging and of involvement among the various peoples of the Federation to the end that loyalty to the nation shall override sectional loyalties. But ask yourself, sparkling as these provisions are, the sad reality, as we all know, is that this country continues to grapple with the challenges of managing its diversity. I'll just give you an example of how the lack of constructive management of our diversity is partly responsible for the myriads of challenges that we grapple with as a country. And many of them are man-made and self-inflicted. I give you examples. What I call the general failure of statecraft at all tiers of government, by which I mean the challenges of leadership, poor management of our diversity, and I've given examples, the lack of an inclusive political system, or the failure to institute a security architecture that accommodates Nigeria's diversity. And you find, unfortunately, that there are challenges of the marginalization of minorities. There is, tragically, what I call the manipulation and distortion of institutional mechanisms and building blocks of national cohesion. And you know the examples. Is it the NYSC program, how it has been bastardized, unfortunately? Or is it the unity colleges? Or is it the manner in which the federal character principle is often implemented in a manner that essentially enthrones mediocrity? And you find, of course, that the manipulation of religion, ethnicity, and other sectional fault lines are challenges that we grapple with. And so our dear country, unfortunately, is enmeshed in a cesspool of crisis driven largely by identity politics. 8 years ago, I had the privilege of delivering a lecture in honor of J.D. Gomwalk. It was instituted by the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations when our dear brother Yakubu Gomos, a member of council, was the state chairman. And the title of my lecture that I delivered on the 23rd of February 2011 was "The Dry Bones Shall Rise Again Towards Peace and Stability in Plateau State." In that lecture, I underscored the necessity of sustained education and public enlightenment on the abuses and uses of religion, ethnicity, and other identity markers with a view to, among other things, checkmating the manipulation, especially by the elite, religious bigots, conflict entrepreneurs, and misguided politicians of our identities. I mean, take for instance the subject of ethnicity. If you turn to the person next to you, the likelihood is that that person probably does not come from your part of the country. That's the beauty of our country. There's a sense in which we're a rainbow nation. And just like we celebrate the beauty of a rainbow, we need to celebrate our diversity as a people. And I have said, none of us had any choice about our ethnicities. None of us could choose whose ethnic group to belong to, whether before we were born or at birth, or in fact, even after you were born. You can't just wake up and somehow say that you are claiming an identity that is ethnic, that you had absolutely no choice over. And I like to remind us of what the Martin Luther King said. We should judge people not by the color of their skin, or in our own case, their ethnicity, but the content of their character. Irrespective of our ethnic identities, there are good people in every ethnic group. There are bad people in every ethnic group. But if we stay with their character and we judge them with reference to their character and not the color of their skin or their ethnicities, then we can better harness our diversity for sustainable peace and development. And as I pointed out here, many of us gleefully celebrate the election of Barack Obama as the first African-American president of the United States, in spite of his race. And yet, we come back home here, and then our ethnic identities then become a problem. There is absolutely no reason why we should not celebrate our identity and do so in a manner that engenders sustainable peace and development. I've given an example of how we can, in the context of our system and in light of the debate about restructuring that has become the buzz, how together I believe that we can evolve a federal system that recognizes and celebrates our diversity as a people. And on religion, many of you have heard me speak about this. As I pointed out here, a few vocal elements have hijacked the religious space. They have radicalized it and deployed it to unleash terror on an innocent majority. I believe that it is imperative that the silent majority reclaims this space through constructive and productive engagement with religion. As I've said somewhere before, and I repeat it here, how can a community reading of the Quran, whose opening phrase and every chapter begins with, "In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful," provide authority for the mayhem that some people who purport to be Muslims unleash on non-adherents of the Islamic faith in the name of jihad? Check the Quran. In the name of Allah, the merciful, most gracious. So if Allah is most gracious, most merciful, does Allah need Muslims to fight for him? And for Christians, the Bible says that Christ is the Prince of Peace. And so if Christ is the Prince of Peace, how would you then invoke the Bible as authority for the mayhem that some Christians unleash on non-adherents of the Christian faith? And in any event, when you look at some of the challenges that we have faced in our state, when you go to Rayfield, do you see evidence of people's houses burned because of their faith? Someone told me, someone who stays in Rayfield told me that in the heat of the crisis that was said to be actuated and orchestrated by religious differences, he just came out and stood at his balcony. Thankfully, Her Excellency stays in Rayfield. I'm sure she probably just came out, stood at her balcony, And if she had a Muslim who was a neighbor, she would just call out to her neighbor simply to find out if he was okay. But in communities where you find the poor, the illiterate, the downtrodden, should I give examples? You will see the evidence everywhere. But the big guys and the big madams there would simply stand at the balcony and say, my neighbor, I'm just checking to know that you are okay. And as someone has rightly pointed out, when some of these elite, when some of these religious bigots incite young people to kill in the name of religion, I think we should ask them, all right, where are your own children? Let them lead the way. Then we will get to that point when we indeed can come together and work together as one common people. And so I've said here that we must reinforce the fact that religion is a matter of personal conviction. It's not a matter of compulsion. We must therefore denounce and counter the narrative that religion can be decreed. And as a matter of fact, I've said that we must hold to account those who spew venom from their pulpits and incite their followers to unleash violence in the name of God, as well as the perpetrators of such egregious crimes. You know, recently, and this is very troubling, the Goalkeepers, those of you who remember this, the Goalkeepers is a group that is anchored by Bill Gates. The Goalkeepers recently released a report, and that report should trouble all of us. It says that unless proactive measures are taken, over 40% of the world's poorest people will live in Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo by 2050. Over 40% will live in only two countries, Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to the report, extreme poverty is becoming heavily concentrated in sub-Saharan African countries. And it says by 2050, that's where 86% of the extremely poor people in the world are projected to live. In Africa south of the Sahara alone. That should concern us. This, of course, is a ticking time bomb. And I believe that we need to rise up to the challenge. When you read another report by UNICEF, and for those of us who are in the northern part of this country, that should trouble us. UNICEF says 1 in every 5 of the world's out-of-school children is in Nigeria. And it says in the northern part of the country, the picture is even bleaker, with a net attendance rate of 53%. I was reading a story very recently, the present First Lady of Bauchi State, and she said she got married at 16, if my recollection is right, as a stark illiterate. Someone at 16 as a stark illiterate. And it was when she got married that she put pressure and then somehow got an education. And you can imagine the plight of millions of our young girls, out of school children. Then how do we expect to progress as a nation if the girl child is being left behind? How do we expect to progress as a nation if the young generation of our people are struggling with access to education? And I've just given an example, and I will soon wind up. I've said, and some of you have heard me talk about this, these are the kinds of challenges that our political leaders need to confront. Unfortunately, instead of rising to the occasion, some of them, unfortunately, actually would rather relish in giving fish to their people instead of giving them the skills and the tools to go fishing. I have referred to this before, and let me draw attention to this. Daily Trust carried a report on August 7th, 2012, and the title is very interesting. The title of that report by Daily Trust is Zamfara Blows 2 billion on Ramadan gifts. 2 billion on Ramadan gifts in 1 month. And this is what the newspaper said, Daily Trust. The huge spending on Ramadan gifts is likely to raise some eyebrows because Zamfara is one of the poorest rustic states where critical infrastructure is lacking and government depends heavily on federal subventions. In fact, that report indicated that while the Kano state government, in a state that had 9.3 million, Zamfara, that state spent 146 million, while Zamfara, with a population of 3.2 million, claimed to have spent 2.7 billion on Ramadan in 1 month. And what did the commissioner say? The commissioner for information at the time, he said that in fact this was empowerment for his people, and that anybody who would complain is actually part of the opposition. But you know the other thing about this report, it says that this 2.7 billion is actually in excess of the money that the Zamfara state government at that point was getting from the federation account, which was 2.5 billion on average. And so the state was spending in excess of what it was getting from the federation account. And of course, you know the challenge with our feeding bottle federalism. And I'm not sure that the state was even in a position to raise internal revenue to a level that would make it very competitive in our country. I have pointed out here that this is pathetic. And think about the number of schools. Think about the number of health facilities and other basic amenities that 2.7 billion would have addressed. And this is 2.7 billion in 1 month. For our Muslim brothers and sisters, we know that the Ramadan is not just once in a year. And so by the time you compute all the money that is said to have been spent on Ramadan in 1 month in Zamfara state, you can then imagine, you don't even need to imagine why Zamfara, in many respects, continues to grapple with a great deal of developmental and security challenges. Think about if the state government had decided, for instance, that it was going to deploy this money in providing seed money for small and medium-scale enterprises. Think about the multiplier effect. Think about the value chain. And I just said in the lecture, you can just imagine. And this is very sad. But I'm sure those of you who are active on social media know that there's even another major challenge. I'm sure some of you have read the letter that emanated from what Abdulaziz Yari, the immediate past governor of Zamfara State, says is from the office of the former governor. And in that letter, I'm sure many of you have read it, he said that under the pension law of the state, he was entitled, in addition to other things, to a monthly upkeep of 10 million per month, right? 10 million per month. And then he said he had been paid for the months of June and the month of July. And in his letter to the governor, said, this is not a privilege, and therefore you must pay me the balance and continue to pay me what is due to me. Well, I don't know. Dame Pauline Talen, well, she's a minister now, but I don't know what it was that she would have been getting as a former deputy governor of Plateau State, but I will leave it at that. But let's forget about the other entitlements. But let's simply put this 10 million naira in context. When I left the University of Jos in July, I was already a professor of 8 years standing. So I went back and took a look at my last pay slip. That's for July 2018. And I discovered that after taxes, my salary was 418,000, right? So if you divide, that's if a professor 8 years standing. So if you divide 10 million by 418,000, it means that this 10 million naira monthly upkeep is actually more than the salary of 20 professors. More than the salary of 20 professors. And many states are claiming that they have no capacity to pay minimum wage of 30,000. Again, divide 10 million by 30,000 naira, and it will give you, that will be the salary of more than 300 civil servants in Zamfara State. Multiply that times 12, and then it gives you a sense of what we're grappling with. But I will leave it at that and move on to something else very quickly. In the lecture, I've given you an example of what I call a glimmer of hope. It's not all bad news. And I've given you my own personal experiences of how an Igbo man, Professor Ibere Oseke, mentored me in spite of our different ethnic identities. And it was through the mentoring that he provided that I had the privilege of graduating with a first-class honors degree. As I pointed out in the lecture, Professor Ibere Oseke, and I spoke about this during my inaugural lecture, didn't ask me what my ethnic identity was. He didn't ask me what my religion was. He just saw a young, promising man and decided to provide his giant shoulders for me to stand on and dare to dream. And again, I spoke about how I became a senior advocate of Nigeria, how a colleague, as we speak, I actually don't know his ethnic identity. What I do know is that this colleague is a Muslim, and he is either Hausa or Fulani. I know he comes from Kano State. I'm not disclosing his name because the process is a very confidential one. But this colleague, a Muslim, not from the same state with me, not the same ethnic group with me, so promised, so merit, and decided to facilitate my becoming a senior advocate of Nigeria. I believe that this is what we need as a country in order to harness our diversity, the rainbow nation that we are, so that together we can live in peace and engender national development. I'd like to just talk about one interesting story, and I'm sure some of you have read it. It's the story of a man called Imam Abdullahi Abubakar. How many of you recall that name? How many of you recall the name Imam Abdullahi Abubakar? This is a man in his 70s. And when there was crisis in some parts of Barkin Ladi local government, according to media reports, in a village of 1,000 people, by official accounts, over 80 people had already been killed. And this imam of this local mosque, he said that around 3:30, when they had just come out of the afternoon prayers, they had gunshots. And then the gunshots began to get closer to his village. And then, of course, people were running in a stampede. You remember in those days when we were grappling with some security challenges, you will find people running, and when you ask them, why are you running? They will just say, run. When you ask the next person, why are you running? He will just say, run. And then at the end of the day, in some cases, we got to the end, and people were asking themselves, why are you running? And no one is able to tell you why they were running. But in this particular case, people were running for safety, and the challenge was real. And this imam, in his 70s, decided to open the doors of the mosque and open the doors of his adjoining house and welcome all these people that were running away from the gunshots, Christians, fellow Muslims. And by the time the gunmen got to the mosque and his adjoining house, he said he had closed the door and he pleaded with them not to attack his guests. By media accounts, the number of people that were saved that day, especially Christians, saved by a Muslim, was 262. 262. And you can imagine a man in his 70s, and he said he pleaded with them. He said he even rolled on the ground and pleaded with them to spare his guests. It is the likes of Imam Abdullahi Abubakar that the Bible would speak about and speak in the language of who is my neighbor. You remember the story of who is my neighbor. The man attacked on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, most probably a Jew. And who was the first person to come by? A priest. He looked at him, moved the other way. The New Living Translation of the Bible says the next person to stop by was actually a temple assistant. And he also looked the other way and crossed to the other side. And then a Samaritan was there by chance. And those of you who know the history of the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans know that the Samaritans were very highly despised by the Jews. And yet this was the man that stopped by and did what was needed in order to address the challenge that this individual was facing. We need to celebrate the Imam Abdullahi Abu Bakrs of this world. We need to be good Samaritans and be our neighbor's keepers. Now finally, I like to address what I call the gender imperative. I'm glad that the Honorable Minister for Women Affairs especially recognized the female professors. You can't talk about harnessing our diversity without addressing the challenge of gender in our dear country. And I'd like to give you some troubling statistics, Honorable Minister. There is what is called a global gender gap index. And the global gender gap index for 2018 is very troubling for Nigeria. In that index, the most gender-friendly country is Iceland, followed by Norway, followed by another Nordic country, Sweden, and by another Nordic country, Finland. Although it is dominated by Nordic countries, among the top 10, one Latin American country, Nicaragua, is number 5. 2 African countries south of the Sahara, Rwanda, and you all know the story of Rwanda in terms of gender, is number 6. Namibia is number 10. Philippines is number 8. And New Zealand tops, is the other country that completes that group. Now, what is Nigeria's ranking in the Global Gender Gap Index? Out of 149 countries, Nigeria is rated number 133. In Africa south of the Sahara, Nigeria trails the following countries, and please pay attention to the countries. Nigeria trails Botswana, Cameroon, Tanzania, Cape Verde, Kenya, Eswatini, that's former Swaziland, Lesotho, Madagascar, Ghana, Senegal, Liberia, Mauritius, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Ethiopia, Benin Republic, the Gambia, Angola, Burkina Faso, and Cote d'Ivoire. Think about these countries that Nigeria trails behind. And then in the thematic sub-index, in terms of economic participation and opportunity, Nigeria is ranked 79 out of 149. In terms of educational attainment, Nigeria is ranked 140. In terms of health and survival, Nigeria is ranked 132. And in terms of political empowerment, Nigeria is ranked 139. That should concern us. Honorable Minister, your work is cut out for you. But I have no doubt of your capacity to rise up to the challenge. But I've also given an example of cases where the challenge is from obnoxious customary and cultural practices. And I don't have time to go through that, but those of you who have the paper or you will eventually access it, I'd like you to pay attention to the case of Anekwe against Nweke, the details of which I have set out in the lecture. And this was the case of a woman whose only sin was that she gave birth to female children. And so when her husband died, the male members of the family decided that they needed to eject her of the family house. Thankfully, she went to court, and the Supreme Court vindicated her. And this is the kind of thing that is worthy of celebration. So we need to mainstream gender. And I believe that this is critical, and I'll come back to it in the context of universities. Now, very briefly before I address our graduates, I speak about what I call the role of universities in promoting our common humanity. I had the privilege of delivering the Convocation lecture that was the 25th to 33rd convocation of the Federal the Federal College of Education, Pension, and this was on January 15, 2016. The topic was Worthy in Character and Learning, the Imperative of Integrity and Quality in the Nigerian Education System. And in that convocation lecture that I delivered at FCE Pension, I challenged our educational institution to ensure that we equip our students with knowledge, that's the what, we equip them with skills, the how, and equip them with understanding, the why. The what, the how, and the why. If we do so, I believe that we will empower our students to interrogate the fallacies that undermine our common humanity. We all know that education empowers, liberates, and makes people less susceptible to brainwashing and manipulation. And therefore, there is a critical intersection between peace education and diversity management. As centers of learning and excellence, our universities and other institutions of learning need, as a matter of deliberate policy, to engender diversity in their governance structures, in their staff disposition, and in student enrollment. And I think that the University of Jos deserves some measure of credit, even though we're not fully there yet. Because you have the Vice Chancellor from the state, you have the Deputy Vice Chancellor academic that is not from the state, you have the Deputy Vice Chancellor administration that is not from the state, and these are not isolated incidents. But there's still work to be done. You have the librarian that is not from the state. You have the bursar among the principal officers that is not from the state. And I think that the University of Jos deserves commendation. However, we are not there yet. At the university law, and I said to him, the University of Jos was able to secure an endowment from Carnegie Corporation. And there were three critical elements: ICT, gender, and advancement office. And I'm glad that my dear sister and fellow GOSA member, Professor Patricia Lar, was the one that led this initiative in terms of the management of this grant from the Carnegie Corporation. And I said to the Vice Chancellor, I said, sir, we had this grant from Carnegie, and yet at that time the only principal officer of the university that was a woman was the university librarian, Mrs. Ojoade. And I said to the Vice Chancellor, we need to do more. Not only because of the Carnegie Fund, but also because it is the right thing to do. And for me, this was not about tokenism. There are eminently qualified women all over the place. And for me, this is also not reverse discrimination against men. And to his credit, Professor Hayward Mafoy was very excited about the idea. But he said to me, how do we achieve this? The only thing I can do as Vice Chancellor, having regard to the university rules and regulations, is to nominate 2 people to the University Senate. And under the university rules and regulations, for every vacancy, whether it is Deputy Vice Chancellor academic or administration, the VC has the power to nominate 2 people. And it will be up to the Senate of the university to vote. So the Vice Chancellor said to me, how do we achieve this? And I said to the Vice Chancellor, this can be done. If you want a woman to be Deputy Vice Chancellor administration, for instance, all you need to do is to nominate 2 women to that position. So head or tail, whichever way Senate votes, a woman will emerge. And to the credit of Professor Mafoy, he indeed eventually nominated two women, Professor Teresa Madu and the late Professor Mrs. Ajayi, those of you who were in Senate at that time. But before we could even go into elections, Professor Mrs. Ajayi actually stepped down, and we ended up with Professor Teresa Madu as the first female Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Jos. But even if we had had an election, a woman would invariably have been the Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration. And I'd like to thank you, Professor Hayward Mafoy, for that privilege. But I'd like to say just one thing about that. When I met that proposal to Professor Hayward Mafoy, I met no input in his choice of who he nominated. So, I had nothing to do with the choice of the two women that were nominated. And I did so deliberately because I didn't want self-interest to undermine a worthy cause. And I'd like to thank you, Professor Hayward Mafoy, for that pace-setting appointment. And, as many of you would attest, Professor Madu eventually served 2 years under Professor Mafoy, and Professor Sedi Sebastian Memako, the current Vice Chancellor, retained her, and she served admirably for another 2 years. But you know what? I'm not surprised that she excelled, because when she delivered her inaugural lecture, the title was "The Job to be Done, How We Walk and Ought to Walk." Mr. Vice Chancellor, I urge you to continue to explore innovative ways through which to engender diversity in the university governance structure, staff disposition, and student enrollment. Finally, I address our graduates. To our graduates, I congratulate you on your accomplishments. As you bask in the euphoria of this precious moment, I urge you not to rest on your oars. The wall beckons. I urge you to leverage on the networks and the friendships that I believe you must have cultivated and nurtured over the course of your studies. And I like to think that you did so beyond the vagaries and the shenanigans of ethnicity, religion, and other identity markers, and strive to uphold and promote our common humanity and concomitantly engender sustainable peace and development in our dear country. In charting the next phase of your lives, I urge you to reflect on the mystery of the uneventful life of Methuselah. As many of us know, Methuselah is reputed to have lived for 969 years, a record that is unbeaten. But at the end of the day, all that the Bible records about Methuselah is altogether Methuselah lived 969 years, and then he died. No mention of a life of purpose. No mention of any impact that Methuselah engendered over the course of 969 years. And I pray that all our graduates will resolve to live a life of purpose and impact. Always remember that winners never quit and quitters never win. Some of you have heard the story of Winston Churchill, who is reputed to be one of the world's greatest statesmen. He failed 6th grade. He was subsequently defeated in every election for public office until he became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at the age of 62. And this is what Winston Churchill said: "Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense." And then it says, never, 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 never give up. I end with Mark Twain. Mark Twain is reputed to have said that the two most important days in the life of every human being is the day you were born, but you know the second one? The day you discover why you were born. These are the two most important days in your life. The day you were born and the day you discover why you were born. You had no control over the day you were born. But comparatively, you have some measure of control over the day you discover why you were born. I believe that the University of Jos has empowered you with a certificate after the Senate of the University adjudged you worthy in character and learning. And so I ask you, our dear graduates, how will you write the next chapter of your life? That takes us to what I will call the third most important day of your life. And that is the day you take action to achieve why you were born. And that requires you, in my view, to leave your comfort zone. So, our dear graduates, I congratulate you. I enjoin you to step out and dare to dream. God bless you. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless our dear University of Jos. God bless Plateau State. And may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Please, let's keep clapping. Appreciating our guest lecturer, Professor C.J. Dacus, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, an iconic figure indeed, one who has exemplified the fact that our common human grounds begin by us giving in to the needs of humanity, and for us examining and asking ourselves the purpose for living. Once again, we say thank you, and thank you, sir. And we also pray that the Lord Almighty indeed will bless you. Just as you have prayed for each and every one of us, we pray same for you also. Thank you once again on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, on behalf of the two Deputy Vice Chancellors, on behalf of the entire principal officers of the university. We say thank you once again. Indeed, you have spoken so well into our lives. We understand the philosophy of our common, humanity, and we bless you for nullifying, in fact, defacing, the fact that the doctrine of authoritarian superiority in all forms must be dealt with. And we thank you for, indeed, you have superimposed the principle of love thy neighbor as you love yourself. And I submit in all that one principle, that for us to share on this common humanity, we must love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And then indeed, we will have sustainable peace and harmony and development. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to invite the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the 13th Governing Council of the University of Jos. A warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Prince Tony Momo to give a brief response. Thank you so much, sir. Please, a round of applause for him. Pro-Chancellor, University of Jos, who doubles also as our chairperson, 13th Governing Council of the University of Jos. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Since we are dealing with our common humanity, I will say co-travelers on the path upwards, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the lecturer for his very incisive and very interesting and challenging lecture. But I have something I whispered to the president's representative tomorrow, which I want to share with you. The figures on Nigeria's stand. Number 100 so in this, number 60 in this, number 200 and something in this, and so on and so forth. And I whispered to the executive secretary of TED Fund. I said, these compilations, which I call name calling, were packaged by ignorant people. Why is Nigeria second to so many countries in the world, third to so many countries in the world, and feared by all countries in the world? Did you hear what I said? Why is Nigeria so feared by all countries in the world? It's because of the human element that populates Nigeria. Nigeria is the only federation packaged in the first quarter of the last century that is still standing. Others have collapsed. Why? Nigeria has the largest concentration of human beings, human spirits in black bodies on earth. Nigeria, anywhere in the world, out of 10 key areas, there must be a Nigerian. Why? Clinton said that in the United States of America, the second to America in health services is Nigeria. If Nigerian component leaves America today, the health system in America will collapse. Why? Is it not the fact that where there is light, the darkness is most active? It is not that we must accept the challenge of nature and grow this world. Are you not aware that the Jews and the Germans dominated thoughts for thousands of years? And in this end time, the spiritual dimension is on. Nigeria is at the top of this spiritual tree and knocking on the door of paradise. Are you aware of it? You think you are here by accident? Everybody is afraid, in fact, is worried when the Nigerian is there because they don't understand you. The light is forever stronger than the darkness. Why do we have so many churches? Why is Nigeria having the fastest growing churches on earth today? Why? Why is it that our universities are not even listed anywhere? But when you leave these decrepit institutions, as they refer to us, you go to the United States, within 3 months, you dominate the environment there. Why? Look, you have an anointing. And that anointing is not material. It is spiritual. You are the only set of human beings on earth today knocking on the door of paradise. Paradise is a place. And when you knock on the door of paradise, then you seek into recognitions. You have seen nothing yet. Nigeria is going to dominate this world within the next 15, 20 years. Nothing anybody can do about it. You are the ones prepared to download this fantastic preparation that God has made for Nigeria. Please do not fail us. What the lecturer has given us today is what should give us food for thought. Feel challenged. The light will never abandon you. Believe in God and you are protected. If fear comes to your mind, the light has withdrawn. Don't let the light withdraw from you, and you can prepare yourself for the presence of the light always when you are confident, when you seek knowledge, wherever it may be. I thank the lecturer for the challenges he has posed, for the reminders he has given us. But most of these people who bring all these figures are ignorant. They are products of evolution. We are products of creation. Thank you very much.
I believe you can clap for yourself for being a product of creation. And I know that even as you go out to create, indeed you'll become a name to be worthy of celebrating. You will be celebrated because of your creation. We say thank you, sir, Pro-Chancellor, Chairman of the Governing Council, University of Jos. Ladies and gentlemen, we will invite the Vice Chancellor, University of Jos, Professor Seidi Maimoko, to hand over to our guest lecturer a gift from the university. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now it's my own turn to ask him to come. So please come and join me here. The chairman of the occasion will make the closing remarks, but you can know that, be rest assured that I'm very excited. I wouldn't mind inviting Professor Dakas again for another lecture next month. You can see the goodies. Sir, we will be inviting you again. Those checks, just keep them. But indeed, it was a wonderful lecture. And we are extremely grateful. And on behalf of the university, let me just say, the check he gave me, I gave it to the boss out. So that check is not with me. So and I didn't want to have this folded so that everybody will know that it's not money I'm giving him. So it's not money, it's only this. So on behalf of the university, I present this to you as a mark of our appreciation for the wonderful convocation lecture you have delivered this evening. May the good Lord continue to reward you so that we can share in not just your knowledge, but your sense of humanity. You have demonstrated that it was not just in the lecture. What you have done for the indigent students is our collective resolve for addressing our social issues regarding humanity. Congratulations and our best wishes. Thank you. Thank you. And the executive secretary. Okay. May I invite the representative of the visitor to come here and join me. So I'm privileged to invite the president of this country to join me. How lucky I am. Okay. To show my mark of appreciation, I will do like this, like a woman.
How about that? Vice Chancellor, thank you so much.
So, on behalf of the university,
Yes.
I present this to you as a mark of our appreciation. May the good Lord continue to guide you.
Amen.
May you continue to serve humanity with all the sense
Amen.
of dedication that you have exhibited all throughout your period of service. Our warm regards and best wishes always.
God bless you, Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, sir.
very
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. May I now invite the chairperson of this occasion, and then as you come forward, chairperson, after the presentation, you will just give us the closing remarks. Okay. Okay. So on behalf of the university, I present this to you as a show of our appreciation for sharing this occasion, for piloting the affairs of the women ministry, and for your zeal in your alma mater. Congratulations and our best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the infrastructure VC. Great Josites! Great Josites! Great women of Nigeria! Great women of Nigeria! I'm sure you will all agree with me in my opening remarks when I was commending the university for making the best choice of this year's guest lecturer for the convocation in the person of Professor Dacus. He has proved to us that he is not just a distinguished scholar, but a very, very committed Nigerian with a generous heart, an eloquent scholar who has done justice to this year's topic, our common humanity towards harnessing Nigerians' diversity for sustainable peace and development. Can we please join our hands to this great scholar? We are indeed proud of you. Plateau State is proud to have an eloquent son of the soil that is not just making Plateau proud, but Nigeria proud, and at the international level. Listening to his lecture, I became more in love with Professor Dacus. I had always admired and loved him, but it has doubled 100 times because he has clearly unveiled himself as a true gender-sensitive Nigerian. I therefore declare him as a he for she. The he for she is not just my term. It was a topic that was discussed at the highest level during the United General Assembly conference in New York, September this year. And the Nigerian delegation was headed by Mr. President, and I was part of that delegation. The world over is advocating for women and children. And until we address this issue, we will continue to go around. The statistics he has read out to you is frightening, is alarming, because looking at where Nigeria is, we still have a lot on our hands to address in the area of the girl-child education, in the area of the out-of-school children that the world has declared the position of Nigeria is not too comfortable. But I want to assure you that this, under the able leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, Mr. President is doing everything possible to address the problem of out-of-school children. And that is why the school feeding program is helping a lot to address the poor enrollment of our children in school. And it is not just government that should address this matter. All hands must be on deck because the child belongs to all. The problem that we face with the Boko Haram became a national issue and an international issue. Nobody will be safe if we decide to fold our hands and sit back and expect only government to address the problem of out-of-school children. It is a disturbing trend, and we must, in our little ways, do something to encourage and ensure that every child within your neighborhood goes to school. Government has made school is free. All that you, apart from being free, you are being fed in school up to the senior secondary. I am appealing to all of us, those who have ears to listen. We must wake up, because the trend is frightening, but government is doing its best to address the trend. And all of us must join hands with government. I want to sincerely commend the guest lecturer for a very, very eloquent presentation, well digested, and he addressed the issues of national cohesion and our diversity. In every setup, in every community, there are exceptions. And for anybody to use a sweeping statement, we must avoid that, because you have good and bad people in every community and in every tribe. But we must look at what unites us and work towards that. He talked about his mentor, who is an Igbo man, Professor Ibere Oseke. And we can name so many of them. I, standing before you, I can talk of what I enjoy in Kano State because of the girl child education. Government Girls College Dala was a unity school for the 19 states. And the best outstanding female student in every state, one must go to Dala. And I happened to be one of the beneficiaries in 1972. And while we were there, there was no difference between Muslim or Christian. We were all treated the same. We enjoyed so many facilities. Our hostels, our school environment was even better than ABU Zaria then. Because when I visited my elder sister in ABU Zaria, Amina Hall, our hostels were better than their hostel. That is to tell you what we enjoyed in those days until now, when some religious bigots try to bring what will divide us. Religion is in the mind. So I appeal to all of us that what binds us together should be that humanity. And if we have love in our hearts, and the two religions preaches love, they preaches peace. But education is what makes the difference. And that's why I want to appeal to all our children to take their education very seriously. Because a well-educated man, a well-learned person, when you digest the Bible and the Quran, you can never say you will fight against your other brother in the other faith. I want to also thank the guest lecturer for his generosity for donating the books to the school library, which all our students are going to benefit from that. And also his generous donation to the indigent students of 50 indigent students in the university. I want to also appeal to all of us as we listen to his lecture. I'm sure you cannot go out of this hall the same, because he addressed so many salient issues that binds us together, that addresses our humanity and our diversity as a nation. He encouraged us never to give up in life and to make sure that we stand up in order to realize the purpose of your creation. The two important things he emphasized to us is that why you were born and for what reason you were born. We must all think of that and address our purpose in life. That's the purpose-driven. There's a book that I read, The Purpose-Driven Life. If you address that, then you will be able to know why you are on this earth and work towards achieving that dream. We must dream big, especially our children. I urge all our students to dream big and stand up to all the challenges in life. Before I conclude, I stand here to specially acknowledge Professor Teresa M. Madu, the first female DVC in the University of Jos. Please, can you give her a big round of applause? I celebrate you. Is she still around? I celebrate you. I also want to celebrate Professor Georgina Mwansat, Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences. I celebrate you. I also want to celebrate Professor Rahila Gowan, Director, Institute of Education. I celebrate you. I celebrate Professor Lami Lombin, Dean Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. I also celebrate Mariam Solomon Dadu, Dean, Basic Medicine, Basic Social Sciences. She is the Dean of Basic Medical Sciences. I celebrate you. I celebrate all our professors, all the female professors. Keep the flag flying. The girl child, which the guest lecturer talked seriously about, which endeared me more to him. If all of us should support the girl child, supporting the girl child educationally has a multiplier effect. Because educating the woman is educating the nation, educating the family is educating the community and the nation at large. So it has a multiplier effect. If we're talking about economic empowerment for the woman, it also has a multiplier effect. If you empower a woman, you are empowering the family. So I want, before I leave this stage, I have discussed with the VC that they should identify 400 indigent female students, all female students, the indigent ones. But I add that they must also be the best, because we discussed selecting an indigent student is normally very difficult. But the most outstanding ones, I will support them with a sum of 4 million. I have also asked and found out that the best graduating student, I will not disclose the name, that will be tomorrow. But the best graduating student in the university tomorrow is a female. And I have offered to give that award to that best outstanding female in order to support and encourage the girl child. Once again, I want to sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank our guest lecturer for doing justice to this paper and for the support and encouragement you are giving our students and the donation you have given the university library. God bless you. God replenish it 100-fold. Please give him another resounding round of applause. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. Thank you, our very dear construction Vice Chancellor and your powerful team. I thank you all for listening. I thank you for your encouragement.
Thank you. Please can we give our chairperson another resounding round of applause. We will have to conclude very, very swiftly because we have other programs on the convocation itinerary that will take place after this lecture. So we will try as much as possible to round up immediately and then move out. May I recognize very quickly the Vice Chancellor, Federal University Gashua, Professor Andrew Haruna. He's here with us. Please a round of applause for him. May I quickly invite.
The closing prayer. Have you made the announcement? No. Please, as we leave here, we are going to the senior staff quarters, Bauchi Road, for the commissioning of a donor project, a route donated by Chief Felix Akiga on our way home. So please, kindly join us as we depart. Just go to what they used to call former route, the road leading to the staff club. So it will be commissioned just this evening as we leave here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. After that, we'll also come back to the open air theater for the convocation play. And then tomorrow by 9 a.m., we'll be assembling for the convocation at the Jeremiah Timbut Husseini Mini Stadium, Naraguta campus. Please, all deans should stay behind and see the registrar. All deans should stay behind and see the registrar immediately after this program. May I now invite Alhaji Adodati to come forward and offer the closing prayer.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Oh God, we thank you for our leaders seated here. We thank you for University of Jos. We thank you for our guest lecturer. As for the guest lecturer, we are with you in spirit and in all that it takes to move Nigeria forward. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum la ta'khuzuhu sinatun wa la nawmun lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ardi man zallazi yashfa'u indahu illa bi iznihi ya'lamu ma bayna aydihim wa ma khalfahum wa la yuhiduna bi shay'in min ilmihi illa bima sha'a wasi'a kursiyyuhu samawati wal ardi wa la ya'uduhu hifzuhuma wa huwa al-aliyyul azim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim ghairil maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we be upstanding as the procession leaves the hall? The procession will leave the hall. Let's remain where we are as the procession leaves the hall. The procession will be led by the Vice Chancellor. Thank you all for being part of this. And we want to invite you to also be our guests during the other convocation activities. We will be having the convocation play after the commissioning of the road leading to the staff club. It will be at the open air theater. We will take the national anthem. The students, let's take the national anthem. First stanza, please. First stanza. Students, can we take the national anthem? First stanza. The procession is being led out of the hall by the Vice Chancellor. Our convocation play please. Our convocation play is titled Mr. Soulness. It's written by Professor Elizabeth Nyege and directed by Victor Anyagu. It's going to take place at the famous open air theater on this campus. Please come and watch, relax, and unwind. Thank you.